If I have become able to speak English fluently without making too many mistakes, even though my first language, Hungarian, is not even an Indo-European language, then you can do this too. And by the end of this video, you'll have all the answers you're looking for to the question, how can I speak English without making mistakes? The secret to getting to a stage in your English where you no longer worry about what words to say or wait for the perfect words to come is just like when I'm speaking to the camera now automatically without really thinking, is automaticity. Automaticity is eventually what we focus on with my students inside my fluency program, the Proficiency Fortress. But it all starts with learning to accept that mistakes are okay to make. I bet you make mistakes even in your first language. You probably don't speak the most perfect standardized version of it. So why would you be so hard on yourself for making mistakes in a second language you're learning? And I get how you might feel when you can't say a single sentence without hesitating, looking for the perfect word to express yourself the way you want to, and then realizing you've just made a mistake with a grammar rule that you're already supposed to know about. I get it because I used to be that type of person too. I was really hard on myself back in high school. I was a top of the class student, and I knew the answers to every single question the teacher was asking me. But when it came to showing others how I was still struggling to put sentences together, how I couldn't say a single sentence without making mistakes, again, my first language is really different from English, was terrifying. And I talk more about my own experience and how I overcame my perfectionistic thinking that might help you as well be okay with mistakes you might be making, so don't forget to check this out. Hey English learner, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chubby. I'm an English fluency, learning and language anxiety coach. This is a channel for serious English learners like you who want to learn how to make vocabulary more memorable through listening and spoken interaction, and how to speak English more comfortably, confidently and clearly. And if these are topics that you're interested in, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to get my weekly updates, either short or long form videos, so you can make progress with your English learning too. When you make mistakes and you notice them through either feedback from a coach, a teacher, a study buddy, or indirectly in a conversation where communication just wasn't working, you just find a way how not to say something again. This is literally neuroscience, where when you make a mistake and then you get feedback on it, part of your brain is going to light up so that it pays attention the next time you are about to make that mistake. And when you get the feedback, you will know how to say this correctly. This is simply how your brain knows how not to do or say things again. Just remember how kids need to touch the hot heater at a very early age to understand that it's hot, so they will never touch it again. The same thing goes about making mistakes in your English learning and also making mistakes as you speak. Like some of my best students from Italy, when I used to live in London, we used to go out and try different restaurants, international cuisine. And I was always asking them, where do you want to sit? And the answer was always at the beginning, it's the same. And I really didn't know where to put it. And I realized it's the direct translation from Italian, where Italian speakers might say uguale. And then I explained to them how in English the most appropriate way to answer a question like that, if they want to say it's the same, is I don't mind or wherever you want. Just by making a mistake and then getting feedback on it, they realized that they made a mistake and that they could say this in a more common or appropriate way. This is the power of feedback. Understanding that there's a better, more appropriate way to say things, which is something so many struggling English students have difficulty receiving. And that's why mindset plays such a huge part in learning English effectively. Struggling English students keep asking the same question. How can I speak English without making mistakes? How can I speak English perfectly? Because they are not willing to speak unless they speak without making mistakes. Many of them think of feedback as correction, and they are terrified of hearing that they've just made a mistake. Most of us don't really like to be told that we are wrong, we did something or said something wrong, which is why in my classes inside the Proficiency Fortress, my signature fluency program, we are always extremely careful with feedback. First of all, not every mistake is worth worrying about and wasting a lot of energy feeling worked up about, because not every mistake leads to misunderstanding. For example, an article missing or a wrong preposition might not block communication. Giving feedback to me is like art, and I worked so hard on getting really good at giving feedback to my students so they could learn from it effectively. And it doesn't have to be threatening, which is what I still see from so many English teachers in 2023. They keep shouting at you, telling you to stop using this word or not to use that word because they are boring, when communication is about communicating as simply and clearly as possible. We don't always have to use advanced vocabulary to make our point. And they keep correcting every single mistake students make, which quite honestly is really discouraging. And I'm not saying it's okay to have your English full of mistakes, especially when you reach higher levels of fluency, which is what I see so many times. People have so much confidence in their English, not knowing that they are still making tons of mistakes. But if you don't make mistakes and you're not willing to learn from the feedback you get, you won't get to a point when you don't need to ask this question: how do I speak English without making mistakes? Making mistakes and learning from them is simply finding a way not to say something again. The second, a really important component to speaking English without making significant grammar mistakes, something a lot of struggling English students forget about, is the power of listening. I'm sharing a lot on my channel on how listening to loads and loads of English with attention and then learning phrases, expressions, and sentences from all the podcasts, the series, the videos I was consuming helped me not just speak English without significant grammar mistakes, it also helped me speak English more naturally and hesitate less. Because I was using expressions, I didn't always have to think about the grammar. And if you'd like to hear more about how listening and training your ears could eventually help you understand fast English speakers, but also help you speak English without grammar mistakes, make sure you check out the playlist I created for you, full of listening-focused videos. Because the most common reason people make mistakes as they speak English is that they are translating word by word from their first language. For example, when a Spanish speaker asks, "Can you give me an advice?" or when Japanese speakers say, "I drink medicine," this comes from directly translating from "Puedes darme un consejo?" or "Kusuri o nomimas." Many of you know that my native language is Hungarian. I don't use it too much anymore. I use it to keep in touch with my friends and my parents, but I haven't lived in my home country for 11 years, so English has become my dominant language. But I could not speak English so naturally without making mistakes if I was always translating from my first language. The structure of the Hungarian language is just so different from English, you wouldn't understand a word of what I'm saying. One thing that will help you is to keep on attentively listening to something in English, something that's a bit above your level, not too difficult, but also not too easy, so you're not learning anything from it. What always helps my students use better grammar is that we, inside our classes, focus on learning through listening, focusing on specific grammar structures, like listening to loads of conditional sentences, loads of sentences where speakers give suggestions, and then eventually, the more we practice that throughout the weeks of the program, the better their brain is able to automatize those grammar structures. This method is at the core of my fluency program, which helps my students automatize hearing, remember, and then use phrases and expressions without always making pauses and making mistakes all the time. All you need is to shift your attention away from only watching a movie or reading a book because of its story and focus a bit more on the structures, the grammar of the conversations you hear, or the grammar you could see in the sentences that you read in a book. When you see and hear a certain grammar structure repeatedly again and again in the books you read, the podcasts you listen to, or the movies, the series you watch, you will eventually reach a point when it becomes automatic. The only thing you need is to start using it actively in conversations so you don't have to think and it will come out automatically. And this is my third piece of advice, probably the most important about learning to speak English fluently. Be patient with yourself. Most of the time, you probably use your first language throughout the day, so your brain really needs time to be more comfortable with hearing, reading, and using English. And that patience is going to help you learn to speak English confidently so that you reach a level where you no longer wonder, how can I speak English without making grammar mistakes? Trust me, I've been in stages where I kept doubting if speaking English without making grammar mistakes was even possible, when I was terrified of mispronouncing words in front of a British audience that I was interpreting to in a church. And you can read all about it, along with my 5-step process that I followed that helped me gain confidence in my English enough to make that big decision to leave my country at the age of 22, move to the UK, and then start my teaching business as a non-native English teacher in London. And you can download this ebook I wrote to you to take action on what actually matters that will help you build your confidence in speaking English so you could walk into any conversation knowing what to say and not worrying about making too many mistakes. If there was one thing I learned in this whole English learning journey, is that improving your spoken grammar is a process, and it's going to be the result of your consistent effort, your attention and focus, and how much time you spend reading, listening to, and using the language on a daily basis. The biggest mistake you could make is to expect results to come too early, or to feel worried or disappointed about not making progress when learning a language, especially if you aren't really 24/7 in that language environment, takes a long time. Why do you think so few people speak English at an advanced or proficient level? Most people just simply give up at the intermediate plateau because they just can't stand struggling. They can't stand feeling stuck for months, sometimes for years, and they just don't want to either change the way they learn more effectively or don't want to keep going when things get difficult. The more attention you pay to English, to the grammar structures you see in the articles you read, the podcasts you listen to, the movies or series you watch, and the more intentionally use the English grammar structures you're learning when you write a paragraph, when you speak to yourself, or when you have conversations with other people, the more you will be able to minimize the mistakes you make. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because once you learn to accept the mistakes you make, everything will change about your English fluency, and that's all I want for you. And check out some of my other videos to see how listening, practicing your speaking, and learning English effectively could eventually help you even more with speaking English with fewer mistakes. And hope to see you in another video. Channel for serious English learners like you who want to learn how to speak. I forgot my intro. Feel when you can't say and come on. The more attention you pay to every question, effort, and it's going to be the